Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another FIFA 22 video where today I'm going to be sharing with you my new and updated 4-2-2 custom tactics. Now when it comes to tactics, we obviously do lots of videos and lots of variations of different formations. Now the 5-2-1-2 is obviously one of my favorite formations at the moment, and the reason why I've switched recently to the 4-2-2 is mainly for champs only. Now when I've been playing in rivals the last 2 weeks, especially this week, I played a draft with the 5-2-1-2 and I got a win. I played 10 games in rivals in the elite division and I got 8 wins out of 10. I then played my qualifiers. I got 5 wins out of 0. Playing with our 5-2-1-2 tactics that we've done a recent video on. But the last 2 weeks I've gone into champs with this formation and not been very successful, despite being very successful in every other game mode with the exact same formation. So that caused me to go back to the old faithful. Now my favourite formation from last year was the 4-2-2. Now I used it a lot at the start of the year, but I haven't used it a lot recently, and I wanted to go back to it and give it a good try, because the 5-2-1-2 for some reason doesn't seem to be super effective in the sweaty cesspool that is FUT Champs. So I wanted to go with something maybe that's a little bit more rigid and a little bit more boring essentially, but a 4-2-2 is one of my favourite formations and is extremely effective every time I have used it. Now when it goes to the tactics, these are the tactics that I have settled on. Now defensive style, I've gone for balance. Now a lot of people I've noticed are playing press after possession loss or press after heavy touch. I notice a lot of the time whenever I'm sort of on the ball, I'm getting pressed like crazy, and it can be quite difficult to play against. But for me personally, I don't like playing on a press. I'm not the best at playing with the press in the first place. So if you're not very good at something, it's best not to do it, because you'll just end up doing similar things to what I do, whereas I end up kind of creating more problems than I actually kind of create opportunities. So I don't like playing with balance. If you like playing with a press, I'd recommend going on possession loss, because I think this is a lot more effective than the heavy touch. But for me, I stick to balance. Now in terms of the width and the depth is an interesting one. I like to play on around about 65 when it comes to the depth, and the reason is because I like to be a little bit higher at the pitch, especially with this formation. It's not the most attacking. It does have 2 obviously defensive midfielders, 2 wide cams, 2 strikers. So generally you are attacking mainly with the 2 cams and the 2 strikers. So you do want a slightly higher depth, just so you can push up the little field a bit more, just so your DMs can get a bit more involved in the build-up, involved in the attacking, because obviously you don't just want to leave it to that front 4 to do everything. In terms of the build-up play, I have gone for slow build-up. Now, I use this a lot in a lot of different formations, and it's something that I'm going to be changing soon. I'm going to be trying to be a little bit more attacking, because one thing that's happening is if people are going to be pressing quite high, if you do come across a lot of people that do use the press, the slow build-up isn't very good, because it means that you're very easy to press in the slow build-up. So using something like long ball would be very effective. So if you do come up against a lot of people, you do find yourself getting pressed a lot, I'd recommend using the long ball on the build-up play, because it means that you can go over the top. You can use lots of over-the-top sort of through balls, which are very, very overpowered at the moment. You know, chip through balls are very, very strong. But I just find that slow build-up works very, very well for me, especially with the way I like to play. But definitely I'm going to be experimenting a lot more with fast build-up and long ball in my future formation videos. In terms of chance creation, I've gone back to the direct passing. Now, I was playing a lot on possession. I was playing with this quite a lot. But one thing that, especially in this formation, that came up when I was using the possession was it was a little bit too slow, and there wasn't really much creativity. You know, obviously with the tactic, your players don't really make runs in behind, so everything was just in front of my opponent's defenses. And especially when it comes to champs, obviously a lot of people do generally like to sit quite deep, so there was just no penetration. Everything was in front, and eventually you're going to try a risky pass to make something happen. It gets intercepted and you end up getting countered. So I'm going to go back to the direct passing, because whilst I did concede chances in this formation, it was a lot better offensively. A lot more goals getting scored, a lot more chances getting created, and just a lot more fun and just a lot more effective. So it worked a lot better for champs. Whereas in the 5-2-1-2, with the way we was playing, it was just far too open, and it just allowed too much space. In this, you're solid, your shape is a bit more solid, so it's a lot more effective, but you still obviously get the advantage of the chances being created. In terms of the offensive width, I've gone for 65, a little bit wider. One thing I did find as well when I was going sort of a bit more narrow on sort of like 50-55 was that your 2 cams that we do have on free roam, they did seem to drift inside a lot more. So I just want their starting to this position to be a little bit wider, because they didn't have any width in the formation. So I want them to just be a little bit wider to make sure that, whilst sometimes I do want them to drift inside, generally I do want them to start with a slightly wider position, just so it's a bit easier for me to kind of pick space. If they keep drifting inside all the time, it becomes very congested and very difficult to obviously the direct passing to be effective. In terms of the instructions, of course, pretty much the standard as you'd expect when it comes to obviously check, comes for crosses and sweeper keeper, and especially for the fullbacks as well. Both those guys on stay back while attacking and on overlap. On occasions when we are a little bit higher up the pitch and they do kind of drift forward, I do want them to stay wide. I don't want them to kind of go infield. I want them to stay wide, because I do want a little bit of width in the team. In terms of those guys being on stay back while attacking, I think it's a must. And this, again, this setup that we've made, this is something that I will personally only use for FUT Champions. I wouldn't use this for Rivals. I wouldn't use this for my playoffs, because in those games, in those modes, you can be a little bit more free, a little bit more open. I think in Champs, you do have to be a little bit more tactical in the way you set your team up. So we are going to have these guys on stay back while attacking, which just obviously gives us that strength in the back four. And then obviously the two midfielders as well. We're going to have these guys on stay back while attacking and cut passing lanes, cover center, which again, pretty standard when it comes to this formation. But again, as we said, we're setting this up mainly for FUT Champs, because you kind of have to be a bit more tactical with Champs. You know, I've tried the last couple of weeks to be a little bit more adventurous with my formations and tactics, and whilst you do have some success when you do come up against some sweaty players and that have very good teams and are good players, it just doesn't quite work. You know, you end up getting punished a lot more than you should. Now, if you do struggle a little bit in this formation with creating chances, you can put these DMs to balanced attack and they will get more involved in the play. But obviously, one of the problems I was having, especially in the 5-back formation, was there seems to be an issue in the game, whereas your midfield just doesn't seem to stay in shape very well, regardless of the tactics and instructions. Your midfield kind of just seems to disappear, and it seems to be you skip past one tackle and you're straight onto the defenders. Your midfield just never seems to be anywhere. So that's why I decided to have these guys on stay back while attacking, to make sure they're always in position. The two cams out wide, Bernardo and Pogba, both these guys on get into the box and free roam. Obviously, if the back four and the two DMs are going to be, you do set them up a bit more defensive, then obviously your front four needs to be all getting into the box. They need to be, they're your primary goal scorers, and they're the ones that need to be creating your chances. And we've got these guys on free roam because I do want them drifting in behind, and obviously drifting in behind, whether that be sitting behind the strikers, whether they're making runs beyond whoever it may be. Generally, I do sub these two off straight away, and I bring two other players that we've got on the bench on. So we've got a bit more pace in these areas and a bit more sort of nous when it comes to obviously making the through balls and whatnot. And then in terms of the two strikers up front, we've got Chiesa and Pulisic, both absolutely incredible players, especially as Pulisic. She is unbelievably good. Now, one thing that you could do with these two strikers is you could set them up the way we've set them up. We've got them on stay central and getting behind. Obviously, both very quick. Want to utilize both of their shootings. Obviously, the 5-star weak foot that I went for with Pulisic, I think that's far more valuable than 5-star skill moves. Because at the end of the day, if you can't do 5-star skill moves, why does it matter? For me, my game doesn't really need 5-star skill moves. I'd rather the 5-star weak foot. I think that's far more important. What you can do with your two strikers is one thing that does work very, very well is if you have one of them on false 9 and the other one on getting behind. Generally, whoever you trust a bit more as a finisher, so maybe I'd do it the other way, is I'd have Pulisic on the getting behind and I would have Chiesa on the false 9. Just so that they can drift in behind the striker. Just so sometimes one of the issues you can have with this formation is they can be a bit difficult to link the midfield to the attack, especially if your wide cams are drifting and your DMs are sat way back. Sometimes you might have to ping sort of a 25-30 yard pass into your strikers. So if you have one of these guys on false 9, he doesn't drop in and be a cam and it becomes a 4-2-3-1. He just drops a little bit deeper, and it's just a lot easier for him to get the ball off the midfield or the wide cams, just to link up the play a little bit better. So if you are struggling with that, that is definitely a solution you can have. But this is a great formation, the 4-2-2. I absolutely love it. Definitely would say it's one of my favorite three. And since I've kind of gone back to this weekend in Champs, I've had a lot more success than I have with the 5-back. Still love the 5-back. Going to be using that still when it comes to Rivals and playoffs and whatnot. I just think in Champs, you've got to have something that's maybe a little bit more meta, so to speak, which is not necessarily how I like to play the game. But I think if you want to obviously have good results, And when my team isn't the most meta, there are some good players in it, but it's not the best and definitely needs improving. But that is it for my 422 video, guys. So if you did enjoy, do drop a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe as well if you are new to the channel. But that is all for today, guys. Have an awesome day. I'm out.